The structure you're looking at right now is what is called a cell. Cells vary from each other based on their function. Here is a group of cells that are found in the human body. This is what is called a nerve cell. A nerve cell transmits messages. The blood cell carries oxygen and fights infection, and the skin cell is there for protection. As you can see, these cells look very different from what you were looking at the beginning of the lesson. There are a few things that all cells have in common, and we will look at them later in this lesson. Most scientists, however, agree that all living things are made up of cells. A cell must come from another cell, and an organism can be made up of one or many cells. These three statements are what is called the cell theory. In a unicellular organism like this amoeba, a single cell performs all the functions that enable the organism to survive. They move using these extensions, and they use the same extensions to feed. However, in a multicellular organism, each cell have a different function. In a multicellular organism, cells that perform the same job are called tissues. Tissues are then combined to each other to form organs. Organs are formed together to make an organ system, and the organ system combines together to make the entire organism. Here we are only focusing on cells, tissues, organs, organ system, and the organism. This is what is called the organization of life. We can further explore by looking at smaller particles, such as atoms, molecules, macromolecules, and organelles. However, we will look at these later. All cells contain smaller structure inside of them called organelles. The only group of living things that do not contain organelles are prokaryotic cells, such as bacteria. Plant cell, animal cell, fungi, and protists all contains organelles. These group of organisms that contains organelles are called eukaryotic cells. Those set of organisms that do not contain organelles are called prokaryotic cells. In the bacteria, all the genetic information are found floating inside the cystole or the cytoplasm of the cell. In middle school, you basically learned the names of these organelles already, but now we're going to explore it in a bit more details. Let's review the basic organelles. First, you would have learned about the nucleus. You would have also learned about the mitochondria, the cystole or cytoplasm, the cell membrane, and vacuoles. Let's start off with the largest structure that you can see through a microscope, and that is the nucleus. The nucleus contains the genetic information, which is passed on as the cell is reproduced. All the genetic information are wrapped up in structures like these that are called chromosomes. A part of a chromosome is called a gene, and a part of a gene is called a DNA. So basically, the nucleus contains chromosome, which contains gene, which contains DNA. This genetic information is what allows for the organism to look the way it is. It also directs what needs to be made, such as proteins, and what needs to be discarded of. Each species have a unique amount of packaged genes into what is called chromosome that allows for every species to be different. For example, humans have 23 pairs of chromosome, while a fly, for example, have 4 pairs of chromosome. These organelles are found in both plant and animal cells. The next structure is the mitochondria. The mitochondria are bean-shaped structures where cellular respiration takes place. Here is where food and oxygen comes together to give carbon dioxide and energy. The endoplasmic reticulum. The endoplasmic reticulum looks like a network of tubes. The endoplasmic reticulum carries out material throughout the cell. They work like a highway to transport materials. On the endoplasmic reticulum are small dots. These dots are what is known as ribosomes, another organelle. In our body, there are many proteins that are made. A majority of our body is made up of protein. So whenever we need to make proteins, the ribosomes is what is responsible for making these proteins. They also make up specific proteins such as enzymes and hormones. The vacuoles. Even though both plants and animal cells have vacuoles, the plant cell vacuoles are much larger and more prominent. However, in animal cells, they are smaller. The vacuoles basically act as a storage organ in where food, water, waste, and other materials are stored. Around the outer edges of the cell is the cell membrane or the plasma membrane. It is found in both plant and animal cells. In the plant cell, the cell membrane is inside the cell wall. In the animal cell, the cell membrane is the outer layer. The cell membrane is selectively permeable, which allows materials to be transported in and out of the cell. It is a barrier between the cell and its environment. The cell membrane is responsible for homeostasis within the cell. The cystole or the cytoplasm. The cystole or cytoplasm is a jelly-like fluid that all the cytoplasm, that all the cell organelles, is found floating inside of. It is found both in plants and animal cells. The plant cell. The plant cell is very similar to the animal cell except for two major structures. One is the cell wall and two is the chloroplast. The cell wall. The cell wall is only found in plant cell. It is not an animal cell. It is a stiff barrier that separates the cytoplasm from the outside of the cell, protecting the inside of the cell. The cell wall also gives the cell a box shape. The chloroplast is what is responsible for plants having the ability to make food. The chloroplast contains chlorophyll.